James. All right. Well, welcome. This is the Two Regular Guys Forum. We're going to be talking embroidery and screen printing today. So hopefully you guys have a lot of questions. My name's Terry Combs. This is Aaron Montgomery. And we are the Two Regular Guys podcast. The number two regular guys, just like on Aaron's shirt there. We broadcast every Friday at 11 o'clock Eastern time, 10 o'clock Central time. And we talk garment decorating. So we'd love to have you guys join us. But Aaron, you want to talk to our guests?
So we are blessed to have a wonderful panel of guests here, and we're going to let them introduce themselves because, you know, it's Saturday, so it's a day off for us. But so Kristine, Shreve, go ahead and let us know who you are.
Okay, I'm Kristine Shreve. I'm the Director of Marketing for Enmart. I am a once a quarter host on the Two Regular Guys podcast. I do the Women in Decoration podcast. I'm the moderator. I also founded the Women in Garment Decoration group. Specialties, social media, embroidery. This is starting to sound like a dating profile now. So I'm going to stop and pass it to Erich.
Well, by the way, our listeners, our followers are called the Regulators, and Kristine invented that name. So
thank you, Kristine, for that. My name is Erich Campbell, and that's not particularly important aside from the fact that I've been on shop floors for about 20 years, in-house digitizer, embroiderer, and doing e-commerce as well. Since then, I've been working at Bright and Leap as a program manager and helping to develop software. So I've been on all sides of the embroidery and e-commerce industry, and generally that's what I'm here doing. And if you've seen me, you probably see me teaching or writing for the magazines. And also, I'm often behind these panels working for the Two Regular Guys as their producers. So everybody has come up so far and goes, so why are you on the front of the camera? But here to talk stitches today and happy to do so.
Hello, my name is Brian Lang. I'm with Lawson Screen and Digital. Before that, I was an owner-operator of a screen printing business for 34 years. My first year, I did maybe 1,500 images. My last 8 years in the industry, I did over 1 million images a year. The last 7 years, I've been the national sales manager for Lawson Screen and Digital.
Hi, my name is Paul Zingone. I am marketing for Vastex International screen printing equipment. I have been there about 8 years doing the marketing, some sales, trade shows, obviously. Also own and operate my own screen printing business, embroidery, screen printing, dye sublimation, vinyl, do a little bit of everything. So I know a little bit of all the different industries.
Enough to get you in trouble.
Yeah, enough to get in trouble. Yeah, yeah.
just enough to be dangerous,
Yep,
right?
yep.
All right. Well, let's start with our two screen printers. They about 15 years ago, Aaron and I worked for a company called US Screen, who invented the T-Jet direct-to-garment printer. And Scott Fresner, who owned that company, said, you know, in a couple of years, screen printing is going to be gone. It's going to be completely replaced by direct-to-garment. You guys have any comments on that?
Yeah, definitely. The change in the industry has been huge in the past. Few years. It's been ramping up so much so that we're really pushing our conveyor dryers for direct-to-garment at Vastex, and it was one of those things that we're like, oh, it'll never keep up with screen printing. It's just not going to be there. The quality wasn't there, but the past 3 to 5 years has been huge for the direct-to-garment industry, and we're seeing it in the States and Europe. I mean, all around the world, really. If you want to add anything.
Yeah, the direct-to-garment industry, or direct-to-garment printing, was really big in the European countries before it came over to the U.S. And now the technology with the digital print arms and things like that have added speeds where you can print 200, 300, 400 shirts an hour through DTG. So luckily for us, we don't manufacture that equipment, but we do manufacture the dryers that can cure those shirts that fast. And we are seeing probably 10 to 15% growth each year just in DTG. So it's definitely here to stay and is growing in our industry.
Very good. So embroidery-wise, let's talk a little bit about what's out there that people say is going to replace embroidery. Anything at all?
You know, honestly, there is a little bit of that going on right now because we've got a lot of these dimensional treatments. If you've seen some of these dimensional heat press treatments, pretty constantly people say they are, you know, embroidery replacements. Sometimes people even say flock or brick heat cut vinyl is an embroidery replacement. But I'm going to be honest and say I don't think it's an embroidery replacement. I think it's just another way to get a dimensional logo, but embroidery is still very much here to stay. Frankly, I see embroidery increasing because we're also using patches to achieve something that's similar to that dimensional look. And the patch and pin culture is huge right now.
I'd say that's true. I'm going to let you have that.
So let me have that one. All right.
All right. Well, let's start off here. I can not get the feedback from that. All right. What questions do you guys in the audience have? We've got one right away. I love
Right.
it. Perfect.
Awesome. Awesome.
Hi.
Hi, I was looking at the logo on your polo. An embroidered logo or print logo?
This one, it actually is screen printed. It is silicone ink, which is a little bit gaining popularity. It's been around for a long time, but it makes it easier for polyester, 100% polyester shirts. A little bit lower cure temperature, bleed resistance, crazy stretchabilities to it. So yeah, it's a silicone screen printing ink.
Great. Excellent. Thank you for the question. Wonderful. What other questions do you guys have for our experts out there before we continue on? And awesome.
You're
I
like
love
my
it.
kids in college. I always say, sit in the front row and volunteer to go first.
I know, or what?
I'm guessing you can do it on a transfer. We use direct print, but I'm sure it's similar to plastisol inks where you can do a transfer.
All right. Good. Excellent. What other questions do we have from the audience here? And as you raise your hand and yeah, that's all.
Here's your opportunity to talk to people with lots and lots of experience in both embroidery and in screen printing.
Yep. So guys, the next question I wanted to ask is I want to kind of break away from the technical side for 1 second. And I want to get a sense from you guys, what you guys are seeing out there as a trend. What are people doing a lot of printing for these days? You know, what are the trends hot right now?
I find that athletic wear is getting even more popular with the polyesters, and people are starting to go away from all these 6, 8, 10 color prints and basically going back down to 1 and 2 color images and being more challenging with the graphics. So we're doing halftones with white ink that maybe they didn't do 15, 20 years ago. But nowadays with the new emulsions that are out there and the high quality meshes that are, you can do some really good white on black images as we have here on a 250 mesh screen and get a good opacity. Yeah. 20 years ago, you couldn't do that. So we're seeing a lot of smaller colors on higher performance fabrics.
Okay. All right. What about in the embroidery world? What's happening trend wise over there?
I think the big thing I've been seeing is multimedia kind of stuff. Maybe because we sell sublimation and embroidery, so I see people doing both, or rhinestones and vinyl, or, you know, if you sell polyester thread, you can embroider something and then sublimate over it, which is really cool. So there's a lot of combo kind of dishes happening now, I guess, on the menu. And that's, I think, a really cool trend to see. I'm very excited by it anyway.
Very cool. Okay. All right.
I know I already mentioned it, but really patches. If you see, and patches of various sorts, we're seeing people who are getting laser engravers, laser cutters, who are working on leatherette patches. That's really huge right now. And you're seeing them actually be produced by vendors. So leather patches are huge. Patches on hats. It's hilarious because when I first started out, patches on hats was like the old school way of doing hats that nobody wanted because they didn't like the look. Now everybody wants the patch on hat look. So patches and dimensional emblems in embroidery and beyond. So constantly everybody doing 3D foam, trying to put 3D foam everywhere, and patches on everything. And that just has not stopped. The first article I wrote about patches that kind of took off was a few years ago, where I said, let's see how long this lasts. And it has just continued to build up steam.
Nice.
Okay. It sounds a little like something like Dr. Seuss, patches on hats.
It might be, but you know, you are our resident writer, Terry.
I am the resident writer.
By all means.
All right. Paul, do you have anything to add? Friend?
And one thing I'm really excited about the dye sub on polyester threads, because to be able to do just a white thread underlayment and just have a full color design, it's a really, really cool thing. And I never thought about it until recently. I learned, I'm like, it's polyester. I can do dye sub on that. But in the screen printing industry, water-based is the one big trend that it's been coming for a long time. You go to Europe 5 years ago to a trade show, and all they talked about was water-based. Plastisol almost wasn't even a thing anymore 5 years ago. And in the States, it's starting to pick up steam just because the inks are getting better. They don't dry in the screens as quickly, but they dry quicker in the conveyor dryers. So again, just the advances in water-based is making it a lot easier for people to make that change.
Nice. So Brian, you had mentioned polyester a little bit earlier in some of the trends that you were talking about. What are some of the unique challenges that come about when you're dealing with polyester when you're screen printing?
When people are printing with polyester, we get phone calls weekly on my garment is shrinking. My garment is bleeding through post migration on the white inks. So nowadays on the polyester prints with Plastisol, the majority of manufacturers now have inks that cure at 270, 280 degrees. And you can use that as a white underbase and put a typical basic color on top of it, and it all melts in together and cures at 280. So that's been a big help with controlling shrinkage on polyester fabrics, especially in the athletic wear. And then also, since you're not bringing that garment up to 320 or 350 degrees, you're not releasing all that dye from the fabric.
Okay.
So it's helping with the dye migration and keeping it in check.
Sure.
Well, so for Erich and Kristine, what about products that would be a challenge for you in embroidery, especially new fabrics that are available today?
Honestly, polyester. I mean, athletic wear causes a lot of problems with puckering and stretch. And frankly, a lot of what it is operator error. And I don't want to say that, but really there's a ton of people who are overstretching their garments. They're stretching them drum tight because they see these puckers, but then it rebounds after you let it out of the hoop because the hoop is keeping it arrested. So between that and then the fact that people want to use one embroidery design, one digitized design on everything. And when they do that, essentially they can't mitigate the problems with the digitizing, which there's a lot you can do in digitizing to keep that stuff to go down. You don't use as much density. You can use a global underlay that will spread out that fabric and keep it from puckering. So honestly, just the same as with print of any kind, dealing with thin athletic polyester clothing is absolutely one of our biggest challenges too.
Okay.
I would say the big thing is that a lot of people who embroider don't necessarily know about the specialty stabilizers and stuff. They learn how to embroider, they get a tearaway or a cutaway with their machine, and they think that's all that their possibilities are. And with a lot of the specialty stabilizers, that's hard to say. Stabilizers that can help with performance wear, that can help with light fabrics, that can help with hats, that can really make the embroidery easier and make it look nicer, but people don't know that they're available. I write about this a ton because I think it's important. So I think that's the big challenge. The other one is circling back to patches a little bit. People don't realize all the things you can do with those. They tend to think that they either go on hats, you can put them on shirts, you can put them on bags. They're also a great option for things that are hard to embroider. So that's another way that you can circumvent a challenge that people don't often realize.
Yeah.
So
There we go.
Another thing when you're printing on athletic wear or just high-end polyester or polyester-like a product is a lot of the smaller shops have smaller dryers and they don't have forced air in those dryers. Without forced air in a dryer, it's hard to maintain and take care of the product from shrinking or even melting. And a lot of times the ink will get too hot because there's hot spots in your dryer. So we as manufacturers are always talking to people, teaching them about the importance of forced air in dryers. Years ago, there was not much forced air. The newer dryers, when you go out there, all the manufacturers, including Lawson, were pushing forced air. It's actually to protect the fabric and you as a owner on your product. So you might spend a little bit more money for that forced air, but in the long run, it's going to be easier to produce that garment and have less waste or misprints because of it.
Sure.
I'll say one thing on that because we've actually gotten rid of all of our forced air on all of our dryers. With us, instead of using the forced air, which we used to have years ago, we did a lot of testing, found for a lot of it is longer dwell time and lower temperatures. That does the same thing as forced air. The forced air basically cools the garment by blowing down on it. The lower temperature, longer dwell time does the same thing. It just doesn't get it as hot. So you're basically doing the same thing with two different dryers.
Yeah.
So, so the other option is you need to go with a longer dryer so you have less heat in the chamber for a longer period of time. That is the other option.
It feels like a throwdown to me. But
Yeah, like
hey, let's look at a crystal ball and talk about what's down the road 6-12 months in each of your different areas of expertise. Look in that crystal ball, Kristine.
Oh, well, boy, that's a good question. Honestly, I think the one thing that's kind of interesting, and Erich, I think, did some videos of this in from Long Beach, is it's called color reel, I think is what it is. And it's actually thread that the color is put on it when you're embroidering. And it's a very interesting idea. I have no clue how it would actually work and if it would work like well, but it looks really cool.
Well, that's good looking at the crystal ball. It doesn't have to be proven.
There you go. So go ahead.
You know what? I'll actually comment on color reel, and this is where I get to tell a story that makes me feel uncomfortable. I actually write for a UK magazine, and this came out in Europe first. And they asked me for a commentary, and admittedly, I gave a commentary which was like, yeah, we'll see what happens with it. I don't know. And it was not a very glowing commentary. So when I come around to the color reel booth, I'm maybe not their favorite person ever. But having gone to the booth, these are the details that everybody asks me for about color reel. So I'm literally just going to spill them all right now live. I do this all the time, and I'm sorry, color reel people, but this is what I learned from you guys. I'm going to share it with everybody. Number one, they told me that each unit, and if you had a multi-head machine, you'd have to have one per each head, costs about $25,000. That's what they gave us for the initial quote. So you're going to have to amortize that and have to make that live coloring worth it to you. The way they said it was worth it is you no longer have to do thread cutting. And as we all know, when you trim, when you cut, when you jump is the most likelihood of having thread pull out or having some other problem that makes it stop the production. So that's what they're saying for that. It does awesome gradients, but you have to take your design from your embroidery software into their software and color it after you're done. It's a separate piece of software. And you do have to use some special underlay techniques to run out the color because it doesn't make a sharp break between one color and the next. So those are the things everybody asks me, and I say, okay, is there commercial ways to use that? I think there totally are. I mean, if you were doing something in fashion that was almost like rapid prototyping, where you wanted to do something in colors really fast, iterate and show it, I'd want one of those in that shop, like in that house, I want that. And I can also see people doing very much like digital decorating, where it's like, we're going to have something come online that the art's already done, and it's just going to feed into this constant stream of one-off pieces. I can see that, but until they get past the manufacturing difficulties they've had, I don't know, and we'll have to see if that crystal ball plays out. So I'm sorry, color reel people. I carry around a piece of embroidery they made just to keep showing people because this question comes up all the time. Super cool gradients. It's a lot easier than the hours and hours of digitizing it takes to make a gradient, but it's not. I always say this, and this is not bad, but I feel like they've struck on a really awesome version 1 of something I can't wait to see in version 3.
Yeah, it's prototype level, right?
Yeah, that's how I feel about it.
Well, how about in screen printing? What's look in the crystal ball?
Well, let's move away from screen printing just a second. We were talking about the future, and you were talking about individuals, what their company is seeing. Lawson, we actually have a unit called the Zeus, which is a directed garment attachment that goes to a manual press or an automatic press. That if you would happen to go and buy one from M&R, MHM, S-Rock, somewhere in there, you're going to be in $300,000 to $500,000 range. We see in the next 6 months the unit that we're selling that we can attach to an existing unit in the $60,000 to $80,000 range, and you can produce 200 garments an hour through DTG. And so we're seeing a lot of excitement there, and so that's where we're seeing that growth. So here at Lawson, we're seeing huge growth in the next 6 months in DTG.
And he kind of took my thoughts. It is the screen printing DTG hybrid machines are really picking up, and they're fine tuning them now, because there are the fully automatic couple $100,000 machines. Then we have a company that uses one of our presses that they can screen print a white underbase, and then they take that palette off of our press, put it on their DTG printer, and print your CMYK on top of that. So the benefit is less ink cost, because screen printing ink is much cheaper than the white inks for DTG. But then you also get the speed of cure, because instead of 3 minutes through a dryer, we're 1.5 minutes through the dryer. So it does speed up production as well, save on cost. So I think that's really where it's pushing, to take the best of both worlds and really kind of take what both do best and make it a great product.
I'd like to catch one more thing, because I actually have noticed this when people talk about sourcing embroidery machines. I have to come back and say, I feel like the digital revolution has, like, embroidery was always very personalized. We did name drops, we did single pieces, people had single head machines, always in embroidery. But I feel like with the digital printing revolution of one-offs, now I'm seeing embroidery shops that are building their collection of embroidery heads out of many singles instead of multi-head machines. I'm now seeing people put together a floor of 20 single heads or 30 single heads instead of a couple of 12s and a couple of other machines. So I would say that personalization, one-off decorating, online ordering, and the ability just to have your own experience, super huge, keeps going on. And even live experiences, live decorating is part of this whole individual decoration movement. And I feel like that's probably for sales and for equipment, something to watch as we go on forward.
You mentioned the live stuff, and that's really a huge thing right now, is going to car shows, going to wine and beer festivals, going to these events and taking small presses or a DTG or a mobile embroidery, the smaller embroidery machines, and you get to have customers watch it get made. They get to pick what design they want, and there's a lot of money in that, because doing the one-offs is people are willing to pay for that. Instead of making $2 or $3 a shirt, you're making $15 a shirt, and also kind of advertise your business while you're there, because your name's out there to hundreds of people at these events and these festivals too, for when they need screen printing or embroidery.
You know, the New York City Car Show that was just a few months ago, there was a booth there that had 4 direct-to-garment printers in the booth printing shirts for people that were walking by looking at the cars. And another example, in Fort Worth during South by Southwest, if you guys are not Fort Worth, but Austin, I'm sorry, there was a printing company from Fort Worth, printed threads in a bar at South by Southwest, printing T-shirts. And it was actually a band was playing, and all the shirts were lyrics from the songs they were doing. And they told me they printed about 900 shirts, screen printed on a manual press during that event. So these live events are really, really up and coming. We had a question from online about embroidery, and it was, I believe the question is, what resources could someone use to get started in embroidery?
Resources that someone can use to get started. Certainly there's a lot of, well, actually not so many industry magazines as there used to be, unfortunately. Right. We have a couple of blogs that we use. One of them is called Threaducate. A lot of the embroidery supply companies have blogs or informational websites. There's certainly videos. Erich has a show called The Take Up. You should certainly watch that. Watch the Two Regular Guys, because they talk about embroidery on occasion. There's a lot of stuff out there if you're looking. It's just one of those things. There's YouTube channels. I think Coldesi has one. I believe ZSK has one. There's a lot of information out there, but the biggest thing I always tell people is, if you're looking at a company to buy supplies, or you're looking at a company to buy a machine, contact the company and just say, what can you tell me? What resources can you offer me? I give out my business card all the time at these shows, or when I'm talking to people or online, and I'll answer any question I can answer, or I'll find somebody who can. And most companies are like that. So just put yourself out there and ask. So
Kristine, would you say it's not a price shop situation? It's It's how are you going to help me situation.
Exactly. I think that a lot of it nowadays, because honestly, don't quote me on this, but I'm saying it live.
You're
so
actually
here we
saying
go.
it on Facebook Live
I'm
right
saying
now.
it on Facebook Live right now. A lot of the stuff, especially when it comes to embroidery supplies, not so much threads, but stabilizers and things like that, are only coming from 1 or 2 mills and maybe one supplier. So they might give it a different name, but it's going to be the same stuff. So the difference is, how can you help me make the most of what I buy from you? And if you can find a supplier that will do that, stick with them, even if it's not us, but it should be us. I'm just saying. Because, you gave me the opening like
I don't think
wasn't
any of
gonna
those other
take it.
people are up here on stage, are they?
There you go. But that's, I think, the big thing is the help is out there and people are willing to help, but sometimes you have to ask for it, because honestly, we're dealing with a lot of people, and as much as we want to answer questions for everybody, we don't always have the time or the ability to do that. But if you ask us, we will.
Eric, do you have comment about that as well?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that everybody just uses my email address. It seems like lately that's where most people learn how to embroider. But instead of just saying that, I'll actually give a real answer. Absolutely, a lot of the core information, as Kristine is right, is available from manufacturers. Everybody who says to me, I really don't know what density to run this thread at, and I'm like, why don't we start with the recommendation that's literally on the thread card or in the documentation from the manufacturer. They often have done some testing, and sometimes they've asked people like me to help them do the testing. So certainly that is a good source to go to. Otherwise, official support, when you're talking about software you want to learn by official support, and then look for a community group. If your software has a vibrant user community, they're going to have run into things that you've run into that honestly, even the programmers may not have thought of. So you learn software through the vibrant user community as well as the official support, and look for official channels. Kristine, once again, is totally right. Most of the official people out here who are making software machines are going to have YouTube channels. If they don't, ask them why they don't, because we should force them all to do it. Frankly, it's just something we all have to do. I feel bad about it, but we all have to do it. There's got to be more of that done because we need that education. And as we talked about, I heard this recently from somebody else in the industry who's like me, dyed-in-the-wool writer, writes for all the magazines. It's moving to video, and it's time for that to happen. A lot of people are visual learners. We're all going to have to do it. Okay. Other than that, embroidery experience. I know somebody says you're going to learn embroidery by embroidering. Absolutely. Nothing tells you the pain of what you're doing wrong like being on a machine and doing it wrong.
Yeah.
And also, it's one of the best teachers ever. Allow yourself some mistakes. Forgive yourself ahead of time for ruining things. If you need the scapegoat, I've ruined more stuff than you probably, especially if you're just starting. And you can tell everybody that you're better off than me on count.
Yeah.
So absolutely get out there, make some mistakes, and reach out to people like us, because I've had people who come up. I had a guy who came to one of my seminars and asked me to sign the notebook that he was writing down the notes in. And I'm like, I'm a guy who did a bunch of embroidery. You're me, but with less age in your joints. I have more RSI than you do. That's all we got. So come up and ask us, because we honestly, all of us talk shop. We love to talk shop because that's what we do.
Yeah.
So ask somebody and ask for the help. You're going to get
Excellent. So let's ask the same question about screen printing. Where would somebody brand new into it? Where is the best place to get started? How did they get into it?
If you're new to the industry, with no experience whatsoever, I strongly suggest taking a textile tech class that Lawson, several other companies offer. With Vestex offers it as well. In this class, we walk you through the whole process. So you'll learn how to manage a screen, code a screen, expose a screen. You'll learn how to set up a design. You'll learn how to print. You'll learn how to clean up the mess when you're done. Yes, you have to clean that mess up too when you're done. And we show you the proper chemicals to use. We show you the proper way to handle those chemicals. Doing it on the phone, calling in is one thing. It's more of a sale opportunity for the people when you speak to them. Going to a textile tech class at one of the facilities, maybe it costs you $300, $500, whatever it is for that class. You get so much more out of it, and that's what I suggest you do.
Yeah, I definitely recommend the hands-on training classes, because there's a lot of YouTube videos, but the problem is anybody can have a YouTube channel, and not all of it's always correct information. There's a lot of great information out there. There's also some stuff that I wouldn't recommend doing. But hands-on, being able to physically print in front of the trainer, and they can look at you and say, do it this way. You're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
You can't get that on online videos. And Vastex, we do a 3-day training class, limited to 12 people max. So when you're there, there's 12 people. We have a trainer, we have a helper, and then we have 3 people that work in the office that are screen printers that we help too. So you get a lot of one-on-one help, and I mean it's invaluable to learn how to do it that way.
Yeah.
Just like, and I don't know with Vastex how many years of experience you have. I know the owner's been around forever.
Yeah.
And at Lawson, our tech teacher has been teaching the class for 30 plus years. So you get a lot of experience. You can ask him questions. I mean, he just has the experience behind there to answer those questions properly.
Yeah.
Also, this is something I just want to say, no matter who you are, if your manufacturer is offering you a class, find a way to go to your class. I mean, there's so many people who turn down educational opportunities when they get things because they feel like they're just going to go to YouTube University and learn it all. But it usually doesn't turn out that way. If you can get some hands-on training, do it. And not that I feel compelled, but we have an excellent education track here at DAX. Come to the trade shows and take advantage of the education track. Anybody who's ever told me, I don't know if I really want to spend that money, $100, $200 on something that's going to make your process better for every piece you run for the rest of your career.
Yep.
There's no price you can put on it.
For sure. And you look out on the show floor, Lawson's got a screen print equipment there. Vastex, we can see it right here. So you can just come here and get the rundown, and then, like I said, sign up for those classes, do those things, get that hands-on experience.
Even in-booth demonstration. I mean, in-booth demonstration, some people do really actually quite detailed in-booth classes, and though, yes, there's sales going on, there's often solid information there too.
Sure.
Well, one thing I just wanted to reinforce here, the one thing you all have to remember is that the people who are selling you this stuff want you to be successful using it. So they will, if you ask for help, if you have a question, they will take the time, because if you do well with what you buy from us, any of us up here, you're going to come back. And that's what we want. And I mean, not to be mercenary about it, but we want return business. So we're going to help you make the most of what you buy from us. That's just flat honest right there. So.
Sure. Wonderful.
And I'll touch on that too, because the best customers are the return customers, and we have really good warranties on our equipment, so they don't buy new stuff that often, but it's expandable. So we love seeing somebody buy a small dryer, and a year down the line, oh, I just got an automatic, I want to expand that dryer. They can add chambers on, and it makes us sit back and be like, we did something right, because they're growing, they're expanding, and we love hearing the stories of these shops that are just, exploding and doing great things. It makes us feel really good doing that. Yeah.
Yeah. Great. All right, guys in the audience, what questions you guys have? What's come up so far? Hawkeye, you ready? No. Okay. Yes, sir.
In embroidery, puff embroidery, is there any little tricks to it so you can get rid of all the little nubs off of it?
Foam and embroidery. Number one, you are going to have to finish foam. There is no way it's going to be entirely clean when you tear it off. I'm just going to be clear about that for sure. It's not going to be entirely clean on tear off. You're always going to have to do some finishing. However, with proper digitizing techniques, you can absolutely get less cleanup, because you have to make sure you either cap or point or somehow perforate anything that's going to be on an open end, right? The other thing is, very frequently, people will see these rows of lumps on the side of a satin stitch column in 3D embroidery, and they think it's foam poking out. It's because they're using edge run underlay, and it's tipping out before the column finishes running the top stitching. If the underlay escapes the top stitching, you're going to get this row of bumps on the side that look terrible that you can't get rid of, and it seems like they're foam, and they're not. The other thing is materials. Always use a higher density foam. The higher density foams are better. The crisper that foam is, if it feels harder, it feels higher density, that's going to be a better foam. If it compresses less, it'll probably tear cleaner. So I would say higher density foams. The digitizing has to be nice and tight. Certainly, we can talk about needle choice, but I find that that's less important than the digitizing being right. Don't use edge run underlay. Somebody will tell you to pre-perforate. I think on hats, where the hat likes to shift a lot, that's where we get that underlay escaping the sides of the column. So highly technical answer, but those are my big tips for 3D foam. Sure.
As far as foam, we're really kind of phasing it out right now just because we haven't really found one that we like enough. And that's something that because we use a lot of this stuff and we have a lot of experienced embroiderers, we're pretty picky and we just haven't found one that lives up to our standards yet. So we're phasing out what we have, and I don't know when or if there will be a new one at this point.
And here's what I will say. I have personally, and I'm not going to talk about for who or for what, I have personally tested new foams that I know are coming up maybe months, maybe a year down the road. There will be crisper foam coming. I don't know when. I've tested some foams that as soon as they let me have them, because boy, I want more than they gave me. As soon as they let me have those foams, believe me, follow my channels. I will show you where to buy them, because I had some foams where, though they were thinner, they were so crisp that when I tore the sack away, it was clean. And that is super rare. Yeah, talk to me about foam, but not for probably 6 months, because I did some testing for people who are not willing to release it yet.
So you don't have a recommendation right now of anybody?
Honestly, as Kristine said, a lot of foams are coming from the same place. To tell you the truth, they're all EVA foam. They're all made out of the same material. They're about the same density. There's some difference in formulations. The one that I'm currently using, truthfully, is a Madeira Bodybuilder. That's what I'm using right now. I wish it had more color range, because it helps to get the color contrast. You want a very less contrast. The least amount of contrast you can get from the top stitching to the foam is going to make it look cleaner. But your friend is an adjustable heat gun. Adjustable heat gun will shrink the foam a little bit, and if the digitizing is right, that's your best bet for making it look clean and commercial.
Good. So yesterday we talked about unique applications, and the example we gave that Aaron and I had as a guest on our show was somebody that was contracted to go to England and in a mansion there do the entire inside of their elevator with rhinestones. Yeah. And it took her, I think, 3 weeks to do the application. There are unique applications that any of your customers or people that you know doing any of the processes with?
We actually talked to a guy today that's looking at our thread to wrap fishing rods. And he was actually looking at our glow in the dark thread because he thought it'd be really cool to have glow in the dark fishing rods. I don't really know how that would work, but he thought it was fun. So, and he's looking at our nylon and he's looking at potentially our poly. So that was kind of an out of the box. Also, people who make fishing lures like our thread for some reason too. So that's a little different.
But yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it's a little different. That's one we don't get a lot, but I've had a couple of them recently. So that's a little unique, I guess.
Well, it's old school. We still have several prisons that have our graphic presses that still print sheets of metal for license plates, and then they're stamped. It's a little old school, but they're still doing it that way.
Yeah, we get the state penitentiaries a lot. The inmates are printing their uniforms and their laundry bags and stuff like that. So we see it in a lot of different industries, and you have to get outside of the box too. It's not just printing on garments, because there's inks for just about everything, and screen printing. I mean, we screen print our equipment on the metal. So there's so many other applications other than just what you think of as a t-shirt. And you talk to companies, there's an ink out there for just about everything.
Here's something that you're going to actually be able to see from where you are. If you were at the DAX show, people who are online, you'd be able to come visit yourself. But everybody else who's here can come visit later on. If you go look at the video that's happening in the ZSK booth right now, what you can see is that we're seeing a layup of carbon fiber being done with an embroidery machine. If you look at technical embroidery and the things that ZSK are doing, we're talking about things that are being done for medical implants. You're talking about things that are being doing for high tech, creating the fabric for an upper on shoes that becomes 3D when you take it off of the machine because how it was stitched together, making fabrics, making circuits, and doing that all with essentially embroidery technology. So if you look at the field of technical embroidery, that's where the huge, crazy new applications are going. But the great thing you'll also see over there sometimes the stuff that we like, the graphical stuff, I'm seeing people starting to use specialty threads more than they have for a while. I mean, we got to the point where we're using thick and thin threads for sure, but now I'm seeing thick, fuzzy threads. I'm seeing fully reflective, retro reflective threads. Now, by the way, super expensive, but for the right person who wants a really truly reflective safety logo, might command a very high price in the market. And I'm seeing a lot of these things being mixed so that we get contrast. Also, matte finish threads, polyester matte finish threads. So people really experimenting with textures and colors and literally special effects that the threads have because of their technical nature.
Start us off too. I have a question there. So, Mary, I'm going to go run and get the question.
All right.
People can't see, and he did not run.
It's a figurative run.
When you do air suits for like race car drivers, I know they make a thread, but it's not cheap. Is there any what to maybe spray or do anything with regular thread, or just it is just what it is?
It is what it is, and you're providing actual measurable value. If people would like to be safe inside of a fire suit, they need to pay for the fire retardant thread and stabilizer. I honestly, because I have done racing suits where I had somebody sign off. They said, oh, no, it's just for doing photography of the driver. And I finally said, I want you to sign a document that says that, because every little piece of polyester or rayon is a path for fire to enter the suit. So really, if you're doing anything with like Highline Electrical, you're doing anything with firefighters, you're doing anything with race car drivers, go get Nomex thread, go get fire retardant thread, and don't only skimp on that. Go and get the stabilizer that goes with it, because these are safety items. These are not something that, and honestly, charge them. Make them understand that this is their life on the line. If they'd like to replace most of their skin, it's going to be a lot more expensive than replacing their garment.
And on that topic, I just wanted to mention, for those of you that have done FR, there used to be a stabilizer called Proban that was like the premium FR stabilizer for race car drivers, for firefighters, for all that kind of stuff, that was rated totally for fire prevention. That went away. The mill stopped making it. We now have an item called QST Shield that is the same thing as Proban. It's rated the same way. So if you're doing FR garments of any kind for anybody that needs to be sure that they're safe, get that stuff, because it's the equivalent to Proban, and it's the stuff that's rated for that kind of work. So just so you know, it's relatively new, so I thought I'd mention it.
And you said we have some questions online, I believe.
Oh, awesome.
Well, I do have a question about screen printing. I have this theory now that the folks who could do simulated process, what we would call high-end printing, even though it's really easier to do with spot color, do you think that's going to be replaced by direct-to-garment? And do you think those decorators that in the past would go to those 6 and 8 color prints, those folks are going to start disappearing, that marketplace is going to shrink?
I think it will shrink a little bit, but it'll be hard to go away entirely, because when you're talking about somebody who they want an 8-color job, but they want 24 or 50 shirts, that's where you go direct to garment. But if you wanted 1,000 of those, and we see it all the time, you want 1,000 of those, the ink cost alone on screen printing is just going to be minimal compared to direct to garment. The setup time for a job that big, it's I mean, almost nothing when you're talking about 1,000 shirts, because you can print that on an automatic in 2 hours. So that hour and a half of setup time, 2 hours to print, it would take a lot more to do that on direct to garment. So they're a good complement to each other. For pick and choose which customers you do that for, but screen printing isn't going anywhere on that.
I agree with that. But what I do see is on our larger producers, they have all gone to where they bring in a digital squeegee, something like the Zeus or the larger machines, and they have gone away from doing the simulated process printing. The smaller shops still need to do that printing, and it's still if they're doing a 50-piece order, 70-piece order, it's still cheaper for them to do it by hand, even though they have to do all the screens. But the technology in the last 5 years is going forward to where eventually, when the cost comes down, you will see the small to mid-sized shops doing more of that through direct-to-garment. But right now, it's still done by hand.
do you see that it's an Amazon world, right? And or what I like to call Skynet. Anybody wants to terminate it? When the machines take over, it'll be Amazon. But do you see print runs reducing? I mean, that's what I'm hearing out in the industry. Decoration runs where somebody in the past might have ordered 10,000 shirts. Now they want to order once a week, and they want to order 100 shirts or 50 shirts. Do you guys see that across the board?
What again? We're manufacturers, but we do sell supplies, and we talk to all the individual companies. And what we're seeing is, again, I own my own business for 34 years. I went from doing 1,500 shirts to over 1 million images a year, and the same thing happened with me. My first 10 years in the industry, I bought directly from the mills, and I pre-booked everything. And every 2 months, my goods would come in, and you try to schedule what you needed. It was a guess game. And now I believe what's happening is we all buy, not that I buy fabric anymore, but we buy our goods per job as we need it. And I think a lot of the larger companies now that are using shirts as giveaways, like your casinos and stuff, instead of buying the 10,000 shirts and they have to inventory, have all that money out in advance, now they're just buying it per monthly needs. So yes, I do see the orders from our customers getting smaller for that purpose.
Yeah, the print on demand has been really making the change there, because instead of we have a lot of customers that do clothing lines, and it was difficult because you would have to do 72 shirts or 100 shirts, have all this stock. And now they're doing print on demand, where when their website says I sold this design, they just go and print it and ship it out. And that's where direct to garment's making it easier for them. So there's maybe when you're starting the shop, it's nice, but we're seeing massive shops that are just DTG, print on demand. They're doing hundreds or thousands of shirts a day, and just a row of DTG printers that they're connected to the computer. It says there's an order, it spits it out, and it makes one shirt at a time.
How about the embroidery world?
Certainly, I'd say the same thing happened with us in embroidery. And over the course of my career in embroidery, it really was where hundreds turned into tens pretty frequently. And now, admittedly, a lot of this stuff, especially if it's difficult stuff, hats or multimedia decorations, something that might be a little crazy, on a larger run, we might be outsourcing it anyway. I mean, just because that is what the price is at. And sometimes when you're talking about like finished hats, that's just where the technique is at. You almost need to do some of those things. However, I'll say in running e-commerce, which is the other kind of half of my experience, as we started running company stores, we really did get to a point where we were doing some standard stocking, some just-in-time stocking, and it really was, like you said, it's one piece comes in and we run one piece. One order comes in, we put it on the queue to run. And honestly, with embroidery always having had that single head option, and even in a traditional screen printing shop, what was funny is back in the day before digital printing, we had the embroidery machine acting like that, where we would sell people if they needed something quickly in one piece, it would be done in embroidery. And if they wanted multiple pieces, we were putting it to screen. So when somebody said we're doing an event, but we just need this one more shirt, sometimes that was literally being like they'd say, okay, well, we got your logo in embroidery. Can we make you an embroidered shirt instead? And so we were using it that way way back in the day. So frankly, now I can't say that I'm not seeing that. Absolutely seeing shops where networked groups of single heads are taking over instead of multi-head machines. That is absolutely happening. I see it over and over again. And between the mobile stuff, between the e-commerce stuff, that's really the crux of it. It is smaller orders, but it doesn't always mean that they're doing smaller volume overall. And it definitely doesn't mean that they're not doing the same kind of profit, because the profit margins are been higher as that happens. As much as I see us sometimes bemoaning those large orders where we can press the button and keep on grinding through the pieces, the margins are so good on some of these one-off pieces that I don't know that we're not making more money depending on how we're taking advantage of that.
Well, I would say one of the things that we've seen, and my company is, as they were saying, we don't do any embroidery or any decoration ourselves. We just sell the supplies. But one thing that I've been seeing as a trend with some of our customers is they get really specialized and they do a lot of really cool one-offs. There's a company called Strictly Embroidery, for instance, and she does the most amazing one-offs. Now, she charges up the nose for those one-offs. They're expensive, but they're gorgeous. And that's a trend I'm seeing, is people wanting things that are very personal to them and are very significant to them. And it's a great market to get into if you can, because you can really charge a premium price for the expertise and the time you take. Now, the downside a little bit is it is more time consuming. There's probably more talking to the client. There's more figuring out how you're going to make the items, but you can charge a lot more for that time. So I think that's a really interesting thing. And it's also very fun just to see the artistry that goes into it. It's amazing.
Here's what I'll say. Though I know we're really hammering on this individual marketing, I also know people who are still doing big old school contract work on huge machines. So it doesn't mean that that's going away at all, but I think it's honestly in the medium space, in the small decorator space, where they used to start to bridge into that. That's where I feel like it has changed. It's more that the small decorators are going more niche, and that maybe that the contract people really are dialed in on huge contract work.
That actually is true because our parent company does patch embroidery for rental uniform companies. We have, I don't even know how many heads are in the automat room in our plant in Traverse City, and we have 6 plants across the U.S. Those embroidery heads are running every day. Now, Erich is also right, though. The trend we have had lately is we're bringing in single head Malcos as opposed to 6 head, 12 head, 30 head machines, and doing more of our sample work and stuff like that on those. But yeah, we're turning out. Somebody told me once how many emblems we put out in a year, and it was in the high millions somewhere that we're making and turning. And, you know, so there are still companies that are doing that sort of thing. I work for one.
All right, we have a question from online, so if you want to ask the questions to the audience here. Okay, let's get one of these online questions here real quick. The question is, we saw all the guys really in the space like that. Is the home hobbyist, the crafters, a threat to the industry, or are they matters to the value?
I don't think they're a threat, but it also, we see so many of those home crafters turn into full-blown businesses. So it's great for somebody to get started. You can do it relatively inexpensively. It's different than starting a restaurant where you need 6 figures to even think about starting. For, I mean, a few $100s, you can start into some of these industries. To a few $1,000s embroidery, you can get the smaller machines and start with just doing left chest on polo shirts until you get into the more commercial machines, screen printing, a one-head machine where you can use a heat gun to cure and a light bulb to make your screens. So you can really start very, very small. And I started with a $250 shop and went from there 15 years later. So you can really, really turn it into something if you work hard at it.
Well, we sell a lot of hobbyist shops, and my take on it is from the customers that call back and ask questions. They come to our class, I work with them, they call, have questions about supplies. And what we have found, or I specifically have found, that is a hobbyist will work out of their home. They're doing the gift shop kind of things. They're selling online. They're happy if they sell 10 or 20 shirts a week or a month. But then when they do get an order for 100 pieces from a school or a church, they're sending to one of our customers who is doing contract printing. So they're actually giving work to people who are already in the industry, helping them grow. So it's not really affecting them. It's benefiting them. And the hobbyist is actually doing good on their end because they're able to sell the larger order and have somebody else produce it. So I think there's a benefit on both sides.
One of the things that I see a lot in the group that I run, which is Women in Garment Decoration, shameless plug, thank you, is the kind of tension that there is sometimes between the people who are running businesses and the people who are just starting out. I think that's silly because everybody's trying to accomplish the same goal, really. What you need to just think about, though, is if you're doing any kind of selling, you need to make sure that you're treating it like a business. That's the only thing, because there is a problem with sometimes people who are doing it as a hobby aren't taking it seriously. So maybe they're not charging exactly what they should be. So that can be an issue. But I think it's great. I think the trend of people being able to start out or do something in their evening hours or their weekend hours or where their kids taking a nap And a lot of those people do build it into a business where they have a shop and they have they're in their garage or they're in their she shed or whatever it is, and they're making it work. So I think it's a really nice trend, and I'm kind of excited about it. I think it's a little sad that sometimes there's some conflict between the business people and the hobbyist or the home sewer people. I don't think it should be that way, but I think that's something that'll work itself out over time.
And to go a little bit further now, on the hobbyist, quite honestly, it costs the hobbyist more to produce a garment. They don't get the garment for the same price. A larger shop isn't paying for freight to get their garments in. Even if it's, when I owned my own shop up to 7 years ago, I could order 10 shirts or one shirt. I didn't pay freight on it. Now I know a lot of people have $150 minimum, but a hobbyist are doing 10 or 12 shirts, and sometimes they're going to Michael's to buy a shirt or a garment to print. So it's actually costing them more. And in reality, they sell it more than a regular shop. So there really is not much true competition, and they do help each other out. I feel that the larger shops who have an issue with them should embrace them more than having that issue, because it actually benefits everybody.
Honestly, I've been called on for this several times now in the course of writing for the industry magazines, where I kind of brought back the term prosumer. There's a ton of machines and equipment and technologies out there right now that are equal in complexity and ability to what we have in the commercial space. And honestly, it means that we're getting work out of some of the hobbyists that is equivalent to professional work, especially in the embroidery space. In fact, some of the things that are on prosumer level equipment, we would love to have. I would love to tell an unskilled operator you can't run a needle into a hoop because the machine knows what hoop is on. I mean, not every machine can do that in the commercial space, especially when we often use older or used machines in commercial space, where you keep them for a long time, depending on what kind of shop you're in. But the prosumer, in my mind, really doesn't afford any sort of danger. And like we said, we're talking about them having this kind of symbiotic relationship. I'm seeing that more and more frequently. However, it requires all of us who are in the commercial space not to tamp down the hobbyist, but to educate them on what things are worth so that they are good citizens of the space with us. Despite being a very commercial person, I've also written for a lot of people who are in the home space and in kind of the fiber artist space. And what I find is most of them are very dedicated. And funny enough, Kristine said earlier, she was talking about the fact that most of us only know like 3 stabilizers. You go into the non-commercial world, into the home world, and they know every stabilizer. They use every kind of material, and they stretch the capabilities of their machines more than you would imagine. And some of that stuff is really inspirational, and it allows them to do pieces that we don't do commercially, but their profit margins are higher. And it's absolutely true. When they get a huge order, a lot of them, sometimes they make the mistake of sitting at a single head for 24 hours a day for 5-6 days trying to run these things. But they usually learn from that mistake, and they often end up as cooperative with larger shops. In the shop that I worked in the longest, we had people during the holiday season, because holiday season is where in the embroidery world, it's gifts, it's stockings, it's little orders. And even for our large customers, we needed to do these little orders as a means of keeping them happy and letting them know we were there. We had a list of home hobbyist, cottage industry crafters who we were sending things out to and farming out small jobs to people who had single head machines. And that was an active thing that we maintained, and we took their large jobs, and it was entirely symbiotic. And this is years and years ago, before this prosumer revolution really started. So I think I know that this works because I've seen it work. And I think, honestly, if we get people to charge correctly, and so I'm going to speak to anyone who is someone, a crafter, somebody who is just starting out, who's doing their pricing, you are selling the precious hours of your life that will never come back. Value what you're doing appropriately. Make sure you understand that the value the customer has does not have to be attached directly to the amount of labor you put in, and get paid. Because even if you want to do this as a hobby, you want to be able to continue to do it as a hobby, and you want to be able to continue to pay yourself to do it and have it at least be zero impact on your pocketbook, if not profitable. And if you want to get into the commercial space, become commercial, as Kristine said, to treat it like a business.
Mention one quick thing. I mean, like they're all saying, price this like you have the overhead of a big shop. Don't price it thinking like, I'm printing in my basement, I'm embroidering in my basement, I have no overhead except for the thread and the shirt. Price it like you do have a 2,000 square foot shop, because when you do eventually move into that, how are you going to tell that customer that's been with you for 5 years printing at home, it's going to be $2 more a shirt now? I was way undercharging it. they don't like that too much. So price it like where you want to be. Price it where you have that shop, so you can figure that in. And you know what? When you don't have the overhead, you make a couple extra bucks a piece. It's not a bad thing.
I was talking to a manufacturer a few years ago, and he goes, "You know what I love? I love Michaels and the U-Do. You guys know the U-Do? Those three-string kits for like $50." And he said because some number of those people are going to say, "I want to do this for real," and come back and buy equipment. So speaking of that, two-part question: and there aren't very many businesses you can get in that's fairly inexpensive, like garment decorating. So number one, what's it cost to get involved in screen printing and embroidery if I want to be a professional? I want to quit my job and I want to do this. Second part of the question: how do you feel about used equipment?
I guess we'll start with I'll touch on both. We'll start with the price. I mean, $7,000 to $10,000 with our equipment, you can get into a decent shop where you can really do production numbers, print every day with it. And obviously you're not doing an 8-color or 10-color press, but 4 to 6 color press, a small conveyor, dryer, flash exposure unit. $10,000 will get you at a really, really nice point. And what was the second half of that?
How do you feel about
used?
people buying used?
I don't mind used because we don't see a lot of our used Vastex equipment, but when we do see it out there, it goes fast, and we get a lot of calls. I was on Craigslist. I saw this piece of equipment. It's only a 4-color press. Can you make it a 6-color press? So now we'll sell them another hub, 2 more print heads. So they're upgrading that used press. So it's kind of getting a second life out of the machine, but we're also able to upgrade that. 20-year-old presses, you can come to us and say, I need more print heads. We can put new print heads on that machine. So same thing, dryers. I have nothing with used equipment because I've done it before. I bought used equipment when I started. It's nice to get to the point where I can buy new stuff, but you have to start somewhere, and nothing wrong with that.
We'll start with a professional package. If you want to get into the business and be a small business running it, either out of your garage or a small storefront, you're looking $7,000 to $8,000 to get into it, and you can produce yourself, 80 to 100 shirts an hour. Now, if you want to do it professionally and go 6 colors, have a bigger equipment, better warranties, you're going to be in the $18,000 market range, quite honestly. And then you're going to have equipment that's going to last you for 10, 20 years with no issues. You're going to be able to do 6-color prints. You're going to be able to do 200, 300 shirts an hour. So it really depends on the amount of volume you want to put out within an hour on the value of that startup package. Used equipment, well, yes, Lawson's been in the industry longer than any other company. 71 years now, guys. 71 years.
You have us beat by a little bit.
We have you beat by a little bit.
We got 60 years.
So we have a lot of used equipment out there. Used equipment is no different than buying a used car. You don't know if it was taken care of, if it was well used. The good thing is with most of the manufacturers, you can still get the parts that are needed to repair those equipment because, it's all made in the USA. Not all the companies, but we're made in USA. We manufacture our own equipment, our own parts, so we're good there. If the equipment's a few years old, buying used, same as a car, go for it. 10, 20 years old, the value difference from buying new compared to all the parts, repairs always being down, you probably should buy new.
I'm going to have to dodge some of the price questions on this because we have such a wide range of manufacturers for machines. Frankly, I think that if you're going into this professionally, I'd like to see everybody in a multi-needle machine. Prosumer machines are out there. Buy a prosumer. I know this sounds terrible. For commercial people, we always say plastic case machines. If you see a machine that's got a plastic shell in it, it's probably a prosumer machine. A lot of ours are big metal machines. But the thing is, you really have to look at support and total cost of ownership. So it's not just about the price that you get in on, because you have ranges from 7,000 to 17,000, and those machines generally are going to be fairly capable of the same things. But what you're going to find is long-term wear, support is different, and you're probably going to have a harder time finding technicians for certain kinds of machines. I know a lot of people who have gone into super cheap imports and can't find a technician to fix it and have no support when they're done. So even if a machine looks like a clone of a machine that's more expensive, It doesn't mean that the parts are necessarily one-to-one, and it doesn't mean you'll have a tech to fix it. So the primary thing to look for is tech support. Can you get a technician out, and what will it cost? Because with machine embroidery, we know we're going to have to fly technicians out if we have something that it doesn't have a tech in our region. And we need to look at what the support is officially and somewhat unofficially among the community. But the other thing I'm going to say is that it depends on your level of commitment with software as well. Software can cost quite a bit in embroidery, though not like it used to. When I first got my digitizing station, my most professional software cost about 16 grand by itself. You're not like that anymore. We're at a quarter of that or a lot less. And the softwares are much more capable than they used to be. But I do have something to say about used machines in general. You have to be very careful in the embroidery industry because there are now commercial machines in the world from companies that no longer exist or have no support whatsoever. And because our machines are so tied to the electronics go out sometimes pretty early. And when you lose the electronics, you lose the boards on these machines, driver boards or CPUs, there may be nothing to do. So I've told people many times, they see, and I'll just name it, a Brother machine. I ran a Brother commercial single head machine that I very much loved. I would still run it today. The problem is if you get one of those machines out right now, there are not replacement parts. You can't get them. Can you maybe run one of them until it dies and make your money back? Sure you can. But this is the second half of this that causes problems. Someone comes in new, they buy a used machine, may not be well taken care of. They can't tell whether they have digitizing problems in execution, or problems on the machine. And so they're trying to diagnose things with no idea which one of these three legs has been kicked out from under their stool. So frankly, for used machines, I like them, but I feel like a used machine is something that you buy when you're a little further on actually in the market and looking for more, because then you have some sort of baseline to tell whether or not the machine's functioning properly. If you don't know anything about the function of an embroidery machine, I'm not sure that I'm going to go for a used machine of any decently late, early vintage, even though some of the machines run forever. It really is about, can I get parts? Can I get electronics? Can someone come out to fix it? And what is it going to cost when I have to fly out a technician? And who's going to help me keep that thing working? So yeah, used, buyer beware, but definitely check and see what the current support, the current parts availability is before you try.
Basically, I'm going to talk about sublimation because that's what we sell. The entry level cost for that, I mean, if you just want to do like mugs and smaller things, you could buy an SG 400 for, I think it's $550 we sell them for. And that's a package that comes with paper and a set of ink and the whole thing. And then you have to buy your blanks, and then you'll need a heat press. Heat press, depending on the size you go with. Again, if you're going to do smaller items, you could probably do a 14 by 16. That's probably going to run you somewhere in the neighborhood of $1,200 to $1,500. You can probably get lesser machines on Amazon from China. I don't recommend that just because of a lot of the stuff that Erich said. There isn't any support. There isn't really, if things go wrong, you're just done. A lot of the heat press manufacturers, Stahl's make some really good heat press. George Knight heat presses are what Enmart happens to sell. Those are all good manufacturers. They have good support. Their prices are good. And I know, at least with the George Knight, the customer service is amazing. So if you do have a problem, they're going to be right there to help you. But the barriers for entry for sublimation, if you go with a bigger system, if you want to do shirts, you're probably looking at $1,600, $1,700 for a package with a SG 800 printer. And then you have to get a bigger heat press, of course, and all your blanks. But sublimation doesn't have a really huge learning curve as long as you're comfortable with graphic software. And as long as you just have the attitude that, yeah, you're going to put on a graphic upside down. You're going to screw something up once. You're going to get sublimation ink on your platen at some point. It's going to happen. You're going to try to cool a mug and the water's too cold and you're going to crack it, which we did with some samples we were testing. And boy, was that a fun day. And there's all that sort of stuff. So I think sublimation is a great way to get started and the cost is not huge. And as for used machines, just don't do it.
My feeling is this on used equipment. Once you're in the business and you know what you're looking at, it's a whole different ballgame buying used. It's just like Erich said, that if you're troubleshooting, you don't know where to start if you're new to the industry.
Terry, can you step over here so people can see you real quick? I have a question. Terry is really well known in DTG world. So if you were going to buy a directed garment printer that's 5 years old, that's used, what would you suggest?
First thing I'm going to say is if you call me and say, I found a used referendum print, I'm going to say the print head is flawed. Well, how do you know that? The guy said it wasn't. If he's selling the machine, she's selling the machine, it's sitting. If a direct run printer is sitting, the print head's flawed. And so I am not a big proponent of selling used direct run equipment or buying used direct run equipment.
And I totally agree with that.
We're in total agreement here. I love it. So tell us this, everybody. You guys sell a lot of different products. What's your favorite product to sell in your different company?
I think we should start with beauty first.
Oh, isn't that sweet? He's my favorite. I think the most fun thing that we sell, I would have to do a tie between, I like our cubbies and our remembers, the little embroiderable stuffed animals, because it's really fun to see what people do with them. Most of the embroiderable blanks we sell, which is harder to say than you would think, I really like. Those are the fun things. And then the other thing, honestly, is our sublimation systems, because what people make with those and the blanks that we find, it's just really cool. I mean, there's so many great things. And what's really fun is you can use the sublimation printer on the embroiderable stuffed animals. So there you go. I can combine my two favorites all at once.
All right. Well, I'm actually going to kind of go with my favorite feature. People may know that working for Bright and Leap, the creators have been brilliant in software to help them to add more features to their software that work both for the commercial world and creative world. And lately, my big thing, I like to push font publishing. Being able to make your own keyboardable fonts means that you can match your fonts for uniforming and for name drops to corporate logos, and you can use fonts that are custom. A lot of other software packages, it literally the unit that it takes to add font creation to other software packages costs more than our entire suite. So if you have the top end digitizing software that we offer, we have font publishing in it. Also, one of the ones that's fun is that we actually have an automated setting for foam that can turn a design directly into a foam design. And it does add all the caps and bridges and the proper densities immediately. Now, it's not exactly what I would do manually, but it works so well so often that I've been very shocked and kind of upset because apparently, as Terry says, Skynet is already coming for me. They are going to try and take away my ability to digitize foam designs. However, watching somebody take a standard off-the-shelf letter that they've produced, select an underlay setting, and suddenly it has caps and bridges and the right density to work on foam, and then watching them run that has been pretty cool. So honestly, the great thing about our software is we can get people in who are in that space, who are not necessarily at the top end of the market, but who really want to create designs. And I'm all about people expressing themselves and making money doing decorations. So that's really what it is for me. And like I said, custom fonts, I'm a big typography guy. You would not believe the amount of business I've had stay with my shop and stay locked in over the fact that I have the right font for their counter chest name drop. It's amazing how much people care about this stuff, especially at a corporate level where you have style guides. So don't sleep on fonts. It's actually fairly important to do your lettering correctly.
This is kind of an unfair question for me because it's probably the easiest question I've answered this year. And I've had a lot. Sold my business and I retired. Came out of the business to be the sales manager for Lawson Screen and Digital. When I took that job, I said, I want to be able to be honest and work with people. They said, absolutely, exactly what we want from you. My number one product to sell is startup packages, either screen print or DTG, and I sell both. And I got to tell you why. I get to work with that person for weeks and months and years down the road. It's amazing when I get that phone call. Brian, yeah, I'm here. And they say, you wouldn't believe it. I was at the mall today. I saw somebody with a shirt on, I printed. Oh my God, I get goosebumps because that's how they feel. And I taught them through the equipment they bought through us, through our training, we taught them how to do that. And it's just amazing. And we gave them the ability to make another life for themselves. Startup packages, screen printing or DTG by far, and the easiest question of the year.
Well, now I have to follow that because you love your and we're the same way. We love the new guys, but I'll talk equipment. My favorite things. I like equipment that makes your life easier, makes things quicker. One of my favorite things that I never had in my shop for years, and then I got it when I worked at Vastex because I used it at a show, was an auto flash. So it's an attachment for your flash unit. It's a foot pedal. You hit the foot pedal, swings it over your pallet. You set a timer, it swings it away when it's done. We've had so many customers call and say, we've had them, they burned down their shop because they left a flash over their pallet, or just replacing the rubber on the pallets just because they melted it. Something like that is just, it's a safety thing. It speeds up your production, and it's kind of an afterthought until you play with it and you're like, oh, I love this thing. I did one show with Vastex, and the next week I bought one for my own shop because it makes me not hate doing print flash print. So little things like that, just I don't know. I like it. It's my easy sell because it's a great product.
Okay. Okay. So go ahead and let people know, both our listeners and the audience here, and let's move into the last question. We're going to get back to any other questions before we go. Okay. So tell us where people can find out more about you, so our online listeners as well can find you. So our website, what's going on. Yeah, this is the sales pitch opportunity.
All right. Well, you can find us vastex.com. We sell all of our equipment online. We have great distributors all over the country, all over the world. If you're looking for somebody local, drop us an email, sales@vastex.com. Give us a call. Go on our website. Learn more. Amazing warranties. Our V2000 HD press, 25-year warranty. And I can tell you, it's going to last every one of those 25 years. So that's my sales pitch on our press. 15-year heater warranty on all of our dryers and flashes. 3 years on the rest of the machine. So we like making equipment that's made to last a long time. So you're retiring before your equipment's failing on you. But check us out if you're at the show. We're actually right over here. Our booth's over here. We're printing a 4-color process job. We have our direct-to-garment conveyor dryers running. Love to talk to you guys if you have any questions.
Well, now I have to follow that. Yep. I can say, though, Brian Lang, LawsonSP.com, Lawson Screen Print Digital. As I can see sitting here, I just saw our 44 Scout leave the building. So, hey, we got a good press. And as I said earlier, Lawson has been in the industry for 71 years, still family owned and operated. You know, we cut the metal, we bend the metal, we paint the metal, we weld the metal, we do our own wiring. It's all done in-house, St. Louis, Missouri, 71 years. That says a lot. Because of that, we get beat up a little bit because we are the oldest one in the industry. We're not the biggest by far, but we have been there for 71 years. Not only that, Lawson, not only we manufacture all of our own equipment, we manufacture chemicals. We manufacture inks. We sell everything you need in the industry. So it's really a one-stop shop. You can stop at Lawson. You can get all supplies you need, all the equipment you need, and service. You have an issue with printing a 4-color design, maybe the ink sticking to your screen. We have people with industry experience, 30 years for Glenn, 34 years for myself. And we get on the phone and we talk to you. We walk you through those issues. If you go to a big shop like M&R, you're paying them to talk to someone. You call somebody like us, it's free. And you get us on the phone. So LawsonSP.com. Look forward to talking to you guys in the future. Brian Lang.
It's your turn. All right. I'm trying to be good and let everybody have their chance, man. All right. Well, you will find me personally at erichcampbell.com, where I usually share everything that I'm currently doing. But you'll also find me behind the boards on the Two Regular Guys podcast. So if you're trying to get a hold of me, there's always a chance that I'll be there in the comments. However, professionally, if you're looking for the software that I'm working with, you'll find that at imbrilliance.com, and you'll see all the sorts of things that we're releasing now as we add more and more features, more than I've ever seen added to a software in such a short period of time. But some of the coolest stuff I'm getting to do is also with our own Aaron Montgomery. He has helped me to get into the world of taking these classes that you'll find me teaching all over the country online. So we're going to be doing a webinar very shortly, in about a month now, where I take one of my favorite classes, the ones that people have always asked me to get online that I have been reticent to do, one called Demystifying Next Level Digitizing. I'm bringing that to the online space so that I can teach you a full 3-hour class about digitizing, texture, sampling, making your turnaround quicker when you experiment, and making your embroidery bolder and run better. So we're doing that in the next month. If you want to follow me on this channel, actually, I think we're multi-streaming to my channel. So I guess everybody's getting advertising on my channel now too. But jump in and see that. And also, I've done a new show that I just started myself live on Fridays called The Take Up, where 3:30 Mountain Time, you'll get a chance to talk directly to me, ask questions, and find out what I've been answering other people all week long.
You can find me at www.mynmart.com. The company is Nmart. I'm the director of marketing and customer service. So if you call and ask questions, you're probably going to talk to me at some point. Other than that, we have 2 blogs, Sublist Stuff and Threaducate. It's threaducate.com, subliststuff.com. I write there a lot. So if you're looking for information, you can find information there. I am the unofficial official writer for the 2 Regular Guys. And I also do a quarterly podcast for them called Women in Decoration, where it is a panel of women and we talk about issues that face women in the industry. And I also am the founder of a group called Women in Garment Decoration on Facebook. If you're female and you're in the garment decoration space, I highly recommend you come join us. We're an awesome group. We're learning a lot. We're doing a lot to support women in the industry. And we are going to become a presence, definitely, in this industry. So get in on the ground floor. Come hang with us.
The next podcast is going to be on the 13th of March.
The next podcast will be on the 13th of March. It's entitled right now, because I haven't thought of a better title yet, Women in Conflict. It's basically about how women in business deal with conflicts, deal with customer conflicts, deal with supplier conflicts, deal with conflicts with each other, and also how women are trained to deal with conflict, because I think it's different than how men are trained to deal with conflict. And this is actually a topic that was generated as out of a group discussion that we had, and our panelists are always amazing. I think it's really going to be a great discussion.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. All right, guys. Well,